Disruptions of all kinds routinely hurt American farmers in the 19th and 20th centuries. Photographs from the Dust Bowl of the 1930s remind us of earlier agricultural crises, natural and financial. By the beginning of the 20th century, many farmers found it almost impossible to borrow money to keep their farms operating. The federal government began to pay attention, and a permanent agency created in the Great Depression worked long afterward to help farmers access credit and survive economic storms. These videos are made possible by the generous contributions of viewers like you. If you share our passion for preserving the rich history of our United States government, please consider making a donation to support our channel. Enjoy the video. The roots of the Farm Credit Administration, or FCA, go back to a president known for bold, new ideas. In the summer of 1908, President Theodore Roosevelt launched the Country Life Commission. It was tasked with investigating the major problems that American farmers faced. Roosevelt appointed Liberty Hyde Bailey, a famous horticulturist at Cornell University, to lead the commission. The commissioners held more than 30 public hearings around the country and received more than 120,000 answers to printed questionnaires. In their pioneering final report, the commission called for the study of agricultural economics in universities. The commission also pushed for a system of cooperative credit so that farmers could obtain loans on fair terms. Bailey submitted a report to Congress in February 1909, almost at the end of Theodore Roosevelt's administration. The New York Times reported that many senators opposed to government aid were openly amused by it, and House members ignored it. But in 1912, Roosevelt's successor, William Howard Taft, reauthorized the commission. They traveled to Europe to study agricultural credit reform and made renewed proposals to deal with the financial plight of farmers. The presidential election of 1912 featured three political parties: Democratic, Republican, and Theodore Roosevelt's breakaway bull moose. All three candidates ran on a strong platform in favor of providing credit to farmers. The winner, Democrat Woodrow Wilson, backed a permanent system of agricultural banks to provide credit to farmers. In the summer of 1916, Wilson signed into law the Federal Farm Loan Act. A new farm credit system established 12 federal land banks. This made it possible for farmers to obtain loans at reasonable interest rates. By the end of 1917, more than 18,000 farmers had received more than $30 million in loans. By 1919, more than 4,000 national farm loan associations had been created nationwide. But when the epic farm crisis of the 1930s struck, much more help was needed. Generations of Americans are familiar with this disaster thanks to the Grapes of Wrath, the John Steinbeck novel adapted into a classic Hollywood film. When crop prices collapsed in the Great Depression, many farmers couldn't repay the money they had borrowed. Their farms were taken over by banks. Worse still, poor farming practices and a sustained drought in the Midwest led to topsoil blowing away in huge dust storms, creating the legendary Dust Bowl. The dust blew all the way to Washington, D.C. and New York City. When Franklin Roosevelt became president in 1933, nearly half of the country's farm loan associations were failing. Decisive action was needed. FDR issued an executive order consolidating all of the country's agricultural credit agencies into a new agency, the Farm Credit Administration. Congress passed the Emergency Farm Mortgage Act to provide financing to save farms whose owners were delinquent on their loans. In 1933 alone, more than 40,000 farmers applied for debt restructuring and avoided financial ruin. Decades later came another major crisis for farmers. In the 1980s, falling commodity prices, combined with rising interest rates, again pushed American farmers to the brink of failure. Family farms were being lost, and the plight of the farmers became a hot national issue. Farmers mounted grassroots protests in rural America, engaged in sit-ins, and drove to cities in tractorcades to demand government action. In September 1985, the continuing crisis inspired Willie Nelson and other well-known performers to appear at the first of a series of Farm Aid concerts. With the public demanding action, Congress passed the Agricultural Credit Act of 1987. The law provided $4 billion to help farmers and the farm credit system recover from the crisis. This historic law marked the culmination of government action that began with the birth of the farm credit system more than 70 years earlier. This video was brought to you by the Public Education Project, an independent nonprofit group dedicated to improving public knowledge of the government by sharing the rich history and exciting stories of the federal agencies that serve our nation. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and subscribe now to start your journey into the fascinating history of the U.S. government today. If you'd like to delve deeper into the rich history of the Farm Credit Administration or any other federal agency, be sure to visit our Agency Histories page at publiceducationproject.org, featuring nearly 250 detailed pages showcasing the diverse stories of agencies dating back to the nation's founding. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok so you don't miss out on new videos and updates.